Breaking tonight, Donald Trump threatens to hit Canada with a new tariff.
Any steel coming into the United States is going to have a 25% tariff.
Trump says the announcement is imminent and that other threat to absorb Canada is real too.
Is it a real thing? Yeah, it is.
Plus, more and more Canadians take a stand with what they buy.
They are completely boycotting the American-made product.
And the national interview with Tom Green, Canadian comedian, pioneer prankster.
I was thinking the 20-something Tom Green was built for the Instagram, TikTok age.
Why he decided to ditch Hollywood for the farm back in Canada.
Well, I can't believe I'm riding along on my mule here with Ian Hannah-Mansing.
From CBC News, this is The National with Ian Hannah-Mansing.
There are multiple breaking developments tonight on Donald Trump and his threats against Canada, starting with a new tariff that he's promising to announce Monday on all steel and aluminum imports, including from this country. Trump making that announcement on Air Force One. He also reiterated his desire to make Canada the 51st state. This just 2 days after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau warned Trump's threat to absorb Canada is real. This already triggering swift reaction here at home. We'll get to that in a moment, but let's begin in Europe tonight, where the Prime Minister was already trying to shore up alliances in the face of all of these threats. Ashley Burke begins our coverage.
Just before midnight in Paris, returning to his hotel, the Prime Minister facing a new round of questions about Donald Trump's latest threats.
Are you going to retaliate? Is Canada a viable country?
This scene unfolding after the U.S. president repeatedly took aim at Canada again.
The Prime Minister said this weekend.
Trump asked point blank by Fox News about Justin Trudeau's concern that his threat to annex Canada is real.
Is it a real thing? Yeah, it is. I think Canada would be much better off being a 51st state.
And on whether Canada did enough at the border to stop tariffs beyond the current 30-day pause.
Is that good enough? No, it's not good enough. So more needed in 30 days. Something has to happen. It's not sustainable, and I'm changing it.
Then on Air Force One, an escalation. Trump said Canada shouldn't assume the U.S. will defend it.
We're making our country larger. We're making our country stronger. And in the case of Canada, if this should happen, I don't know how they can do it without us, because without the U.S., Canada really doesn't have a country.
And threatened to announce tariffs Monday on all steel and aluminum entering the states, including from Canada.
Everybody, steel.
Including Canada, Mexico,
Yeah, any steel coming into the United States is going to have a 25% tariff.
What about aluminum, sir?
Aluminum, too.
This while Trudeau met with French President Emmanuel Macron. Both leaders are facing threats from Trump, who set his sights on the European Union next.
They're going to want to share notes about what they expect to come from Trump and how they might respond. And, you know, they might want to talk about how they might coordinate with each other in extreme situations. Trump is threatening to hit the EU with tariffs and pledging to take over Greenland too.
We need Greenland because of national security, international security, world peace. And we'll have to do that. Canada, we'll see what happens with Canada.
A senior Canadian government official says the Prime Minister's office is aware of Trump's latest tariff threat against countries. But the government is waiting until it sees something official in writing before saying what Canada could do next. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Paris.
While Canada's next steps are still unclear, we're already starting to get reaction from several Canadian politicians. François-Philippe Champagne, the Minister of Innovation, Sciences and Industry, said on social media Canadian steel and aluminum support key industries in the U.S. and that we will continue to stand up for Canada, our workers and our industries. The Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, saying this is the next 4 years, shifting goalposts and constant chaos. And Quebec Premier François Legault called for renegotiating Canada's free trade agreement as quickly as possible to end the uncertainty. Senior business reporter Anis Hadari is tracking industry reaction tonight. And Anis, what are you hearing?
Nothing positive at this point, Ian. There's surprise and there's a lot of worry. Tens of thousands of jobs are tied to steel and aluminum. They are multi-billion-dollar industries in Canada. When it comes to aluminum, the largest share of North American production is here in Canada. Steel, billions of dollars worth, goes from Canada to the U.S. That's the destination for the majority of Canadian steel as well, or at least the majority of Canadian steel exports. The Steel Producers Association is hoping the federal government here can convince the Trump administration to hold off, in particular because Canada and the U.S. have already been working together against cheaper overseas imports by putting tariffs on China.
No one else in any other trading relationship on steel has done this but Canada and the United States. So I think we have a very strong narrative to advance tonight. If that doesn't happen, then we have a very strong necessity to respond hard and fast with retaliatory tariffs of our own.
Donald Trump imposed tariffs on steel and aluminum before, back in 2018. Remind us what happened then.
So this was during the first Trump administration. 25% tariffs on Canadian steel, 10% on Canadian aluminum, and Canada hit back with the same. Exports dropped to around 10-year lows. That affected jobs on both sides of the border because the tariffs made Canadian materials more expensive for U.S. customers. Now, after a year, both countries negotiated a deal, so that was over. Exports started to go up again pretty quickly after that, but this time around, it's certainly possible there could be an adaptation. Canadian producers could try and sell more inside Canada instead of exporting, but they might have to survive a big drop in revenue, and Canada just doesn't have as many potential customers as the U.S., Ian.
Anis Hidari in Calgary tonight. These tariff threats and the possibility of a trade war is already having an effect on how at least some Canadians are spending their money. Many saying they're boycotting American products and buying Canadian. JP Tasker now with the impact on both sides of the border.
The Buy Canadian movement has become a huge force in the last week alone, changing how and where people shop.
A vast amount of people are only purchasing made in Canada products.
Grocery store owners like Marilyn Dibb are astounded by just how quickly Canadians have dumped American products in the wake of President Donald Trump's tariff threats.
They are completely boycotting the American-made product.
And at the Canada-U.S. border, officials are reporting a huge drop in southbound traffic at some ports of entry. In Blaine, Washington, near Vancouver, wait times were just 5 minutes, down from the usual 19 minutes on a Sunday, let alone Super Bowl Sunday. All of that has some U.S. lawmakers furious with the president.
It unnecessarily harms a relationship with Canada that's been such a good relationship.
Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear says Canadian demand for bourbon has dropped off in the wake of Trump's aggression.
Most Americans didn't vote for the president on these issues. They don't view Canada in the way that he does.
Neighboring Illinois does big business with Canada too. It sent $30 billion worth of goods north last year. A lot of it was food. Trump's put that in jeopardy, says this congresswoman.
Just making it that much more difficult for our farmers to keep their heads above water. It's very serious.
Minister Anita Anand is working with the provinces to quickly dismantle decades-old trade barriers between provinces to help the economy along if Trump delivers a blow. Canada needs to become more self-sufficient, whatever the president does in the end, she says.
Every one of us wants Canada to remain strong and free, and we are prepared to do whatever it takes to ensure that occurs.
Some Canadians have soured on the U.S., and Trump's latest threat to impose steel and aluminum tariffs won't help. The country's 13 premiers are headed to Washington this week, though, to smooth things over, part of a diplomatic push to get Trump to drop the tariffs for good.
And while the premiers have said they're committed to Team Canada, some still have demands for the federal government.
Yeah, Alberta Premier Daniel Smith is demanding Ottawa appoint the fentanyl czar right away. Last week, the Prime Minister promised Trump he'd get one in place to help crack down on the deadly drug. That hasn't happened yet, and Smith is not happy about it. Ontario's Doug Ford is also concerned. He wants the czar named now to show the Americans that Canada is taking Trump's concerns seriously. Ian?
JP Tasker in Ottawa. And in Washington, Donald Trump is facing resistance, with critics calling his move to directly control federal spending an unconstitutional power grab. The courts are stepping in, but as Caroline Bargood explains, Trump has signaled he may defy them.
Donald Trump is the first sitting U.S. president to attend a Super Bowl game, as Washington grapples with his extraordinary effort to seize control of government spending.
kind of support that I needed.
In an exclusive interview with Fox News before the game, saying the Department of Education and the Pentagon were next.
We're going to find billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud and abuse, but I campaigned on this, Brett.
Trump has authorized the world's richest man, Elon Musk, and his Department of Government Efficiency, known as DOGE, to effectively shut down U.S. foreign aid and slash government departments.
This is an order creating and implementing the Department of Governmental Efficiency, known as DOGE.
Okay, that's a big one.
None of Trump's decisions have been authorized by Congress, prompting more than 40 lawsuits, including one by 19 states' attorneys general, who successfully sought an emergency order to stop Musk and DOGE from accessing federal computer systems containing Social Security numbers and banking details of Americans. The courts, the only checks and balances left on this government, say congressional Democrats.
And what we are witnessing is a constitutional crisis. We are seeing an executive branch that has decided that they are no longer going to abide by the Constitution in honoring Congress's role in the creation of the agencies, in their role in deciding where money is allocated.
But Vice President J.D. Vance suggested the courts can't hold Trump back either, posting on social media. Judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. President Trump agrees.
No judge should frankly be allowed to make that kind of a decision. It's a disgrace.
The question now, will the Trump administration do as the courts have ordered or defy them? Caroline Bargood, CBC News, Washington.
In the Middle East tonight, Israel has pulled troops out of an occupied corridor that split Gaza in two, part of its commitment under a ceasefire deal with Hamas. But as Lisa Shing shows us, even as more hostages come home, the truce is under renewed pressure.
Palestinians on the road back home, some after 16 months of displacement. We've been patient under the rockets and strikes, says Mohammed. They have deprived us of food and water, but they haven't deprived us of air. We're still alive. In accordance with a key part of the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas, Israeli troops pulled out of the Netzarim corridor, a 6-kilometer military zone splitting Gaza in two, allowing more of the hundreds of thousands of Palestinians to return to their homes or what's left of them. We are feeling good, he says. Thank God for safety. The withdrawal, a day after a fifth hostage and prisoner swap, in exchange for 183 Palestinians held in Israeli jails, some of whom were admitted to hospital. Hamas released 3 Israeli captives. The emaciated condition of the hostages, raising concerns in Israel that those who remain in militant hands are running out of time. Meanwhile, negotiations to extend the ceasefire face complications, courtesy of the U.S. president, who continues to push his proposal to take over Gaza and displace about 2 million Palestinians.
And think of it as a big real estate site. And the United States is going to own it.
The idea has wholehearted support from Israel's prime minister, who agreed to the ceasefire reluctantly.
I think that President Trump's proposal is the first fresh idea in years.
But critics say it could derail negotiations with Hamas and return the region to war.
The prospect of suicide bombs and rocket attacks is not exactly conducive to high real estate values.
Several Arab states have already denounced the idea, and even without Trump inflaming the situation, moving on to the next phase is proving difficult. And if negotiations stall, the truce expires in 3 weeks. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
In addition to Israeli hostages, Hamas released 5 hostages from Thailand last month who have now arrived home. This farm worker, among those captured by militants during the Hamas-led October 7th attacks, embraced his grandfather after nearly 500 days in captivity. This is the second group of Thai hostages released since the war began. The Thai government believes more remain in Gaza. In Alberta, Premier Danielle Smith commented for the first time this weekend on the controversy involving the province's health authority. She's asking the Auditor General for a speedy investigation. Here's Julia Wong.
Alberta's Auditor General says he's investigating allegations of potential conflicts of interest inside the province's healthcare system. It will include contracts and procurement processes around private surgical facilities, medication, and COVID-19 PPE, areas that have previously been under scrutiny. The investigation was announced after the Globe and Mail reported it obtained a letter where the former CEO of Alberta Health Services, Athana Mentzelopoulos, claimed political interference and alleged she was fired days before she was due to meet with the AG about her own investigation into procurement and contracts. CBC News has not seen the letter. The health ministry denies Mentzelopoulos was fired because of her review. One union wants answers.
We need to get this sorted out. We need the public to know exactly what's going on and what we paid for and what we haven't received. Because at risk here is our entire healthcare system.
In a statement Saturday, Premier Danielle Smith called the allegations troubling and said she wants an expedited review by the AG. She said, as Premier, I was not involved in any wrongdoing. The claims resonate deeply, says this expert.
That it touches on the two most important issues for Albertans, healthcare and affordability. And now we have a healthcare system that is being revamped by a government.
AHS says it's reviewing procurement practices. The official opposition wants a public inquiry.
These are by far the strongest allegations I have ever seen against an Alberta government.
There's clearly a lot of ethic questions and there's a lot of smoke. We'll have to see if there's any fire.
Mentzelopoulos, the former AHS CEO, has not commented. As for Smith, the next time she's expected to be in front of cameras is a tariff-focused trip to Washington later this week. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
Some Air Canada passengers are speaking out tonight after discovering the airline had no record of them flying.
I was told that I am not in Alberta and that I didn't show up at that airport.
A Go Public investigation into missing passengers who aren't actually missing. Next. Plus, from movie screens to reality, humanoid robots are bringing the future to life, sort of.
Robots and AI that are indistinguishable from humans.
Weighing the benefits and risks in the race for more human-like robotics. And later, a Moncton man uses meticulous footsteps to create a massive moose.
I remember walking back into the cottage and saying to my wife, I didn't know if it turned out very good.
Capturing Canadiana on ice. We're back in 2. Now to a Go Public investigation involving Air Canada. The airline admitting it had no records of some of the people who recently flew with the airline. We're hearing from multiple passengers who say it happened to them and it was costly. Erica Johnson now with what happened and why some say it's a safety concern.
Hi, Auntie Ha.
Montreal's Yukhar Lim doesn't speak English, so her niece is helping to tell her story. Lim recently took a trip to Europe, but when she tried to check in to fly home from Budapest, learned Air Canada had deemed she didn't show up for an earlier flight on her itinerary and canceled her return ticket, standard policy amongst airlines. Except Lim says she wasn't a no-show. Her niece translates.
I was very scared and I did not know what to do.
Desperate to get on the plane, Lim shelled out almost $2,600. Later, tried to get compensation, but the airline insisted it had no record of her boarding the plane. Go Public has learned of 5 other Air Canada passengers, all also incorrectly deemed no-shows. Their return tickets also canceled. The airline insisted that Dan Ratkoff and his family never flew to Calgary for their ski trip, despite boarding passes, even a selfie on the plane.
I think it was 3 or 4 times that I was told that I am not in Alberta and that I didn't show up at that airport.
Christopher Bailey's flight from St. John's to Vancouver was canceled, so he sued and learned the airline couldn't even find his seat. 34A did not show on its flight manifest. An Air Canada spokesperson said these cases are extremely rare and due to a human error or technological malfunction. Incorrect flight records can be a major safety concern, say experts, who point to rare cases of aviation emergencies, like the recent crash in Washington.
People are trying to rescue those people, and if they don't know how many people are in the water, how do they know when they have them all?
An Air Canada spokesperson said safety was in no way compromised, but repeatedly declined to address what might happen in an emergency. The airline said it will reach out to the customers it incorrectly deemed as no-shows to rectify the situation and apologize. Erica Johnson, CBC News, Vancouver.
Our Go Public stories come from you. If you have a tip for the team to investigate, send an email to gopublic@cbc.ca. Science fiction is quickly becoming reality as developers work to create a new generation of life-like robots.
They're really there to act as a companion.
The facts and fiction and future of humanoids. Next. Plus, long before comedians and pranksters started fighting for attention on social media, a Canadian kid from the Ottawa region was pioneering the genre.
When I was doing my show on public access TV, not everybody was doing a public access TV show, so it really stood out.
The National Interview, Tom Green. And residents of Taber, Alberta learn of a murderer in their midst.
It goes to show you that you don't really know people.
The fugitive who hid for decades. The National breaks down the stories shaping our world. Next. More than 500 athletes are here in BC this week for the 2025 Invictus Games. The event was founded by Prince Harry to honor injured members of the armed services. But as Yvette Bren shows us, this year is also about bridging geopolitical divides.
Even at the star-studded opening of the Invictus Games, a nod to the tensions between Canada and the U.S.
And look, I know our countries are having a moment right now, right?
BC's premier addressed the crowd, including the hundreds of wounded veterans from over 20 countries who will be competing.
Our soldiers have fought and died and cried and celebrated beside Americans for generations.
That unity hit a sour note this week, with many Canadian fans booing the U.S. national anthem at several sporting events.
Oh, say, can you see?
But at the Invictus Games, athletes say there's been none of that. Afghanistan veteran and former U.S. Marine Robert Dominguez says he leaves politics to the politicians.
I just let them deal with what they have to deal with, and we just continue to compete and support each other as athletes.
This 29-year-old, an ex-U.S. Air Force member, says he's been talking to Canadian athletes about Trump's tariffs and understands their frustration.
It's really saddening, honestly. It's really hard, especially on your guys' economy and your guys' just country. So, yeah, it just breaks my heart, honestly.
Some have lost limbs, others have lost friends. Veterans stress the spirit of these games is to persevere together.
They just embrace us. It's amazing, honestly. They're able to put aside everything else and still embrace us. Like, it's amazing.
Here, Canadians and Americans embrace, as they have long done.
Doesn't matter what the politicians say, because if you need us, you just say the word, USA.
The Invictus Games, a showcase of friendship in a shifting world. Yvette Bren, CBC News, Vancouver.
A new blockbuster in theaters is tackling a familiar premise, a human-like robot that goes bad. Magda Geberselassie looks at the Hollywood appeal and whether those robots are still just fiction.
Companion is a romantic thriller with a human-like robot. It's the latest in a long list of bots on the big screen. And now humanoids are appearing in real life too.
Robots and AI that are indistinguishable from humans.
Aria, the AI-equipped humanoid, was at this electronics show in Las Vegas in January. The Canadian tech company that made her sold about a dozen like her so far.
They're really there to act as a companion. Maybe they can work for you as a concierge, a greeter at a retail store.
In North Bay, Ontario, humanoids of a different kind have popped up too.
Hi, Henry.
Canadore College is running a social robots program to interact with seniors.
I think that's a good way of, learning stuff.
Now, older adults like Henry are being trained to take the robots out into the community.
Our older adults live a very real experience of being isolated and lonely. So to have a robot operated by a human being as a way to engage with them, I think there's nothing wrong with that.
This academic studies the pros and cons of human-robot relationships. She says privacy is a consideration with the microphone and camera-equipped robots. But on the plus side is a benefit to brain health.
For children experiencing stressful situations, for families, for older adults in various living arrangements, we're seeing a lot of benefit.
But Hollywood paints a darker picture. For decades, deathbots from the Terminator to Megan have lit up screens. In reality, it's not robots we should fear, says this expert.
Need to be scared only if the person who programmed them to do something very specific that is bad.
Shut her down already. Good or bad, he says we're still decades away from humanoids walking among us. Magda Gebrselassie, CBC News, Toronto.
Time now to dig deeper into the stories shaping our world. In small town Alberta, people never guessed their bridge partner was a killer on the run.
It goes to show you that you don't really know people.
But first, why Tom Green left Hollywood behind.
You don't need to be anywhere anymore.
Green made his mark with offbeat humor.
Daddy, would you like some sausage?
We ride the trails on his Ontario farm and discuss his bizarre breakthrough on public access cable TV. You kind of terrorized your parents.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
You'll even get a taste of Tom Green, musician. It was a beautiful late autumn day when I met up with Tom Green. His fans might not expect him in a rural setting, but they also know surprises are all part of the package.
You know, I've been riding Fanny for about 1.5 years now, and I go out every day, and we really just explore the wilderness here. It's definitely great to be home in Canada. I grew up not too far from here, and it just is very calming to be able to be out in the Ontario countryside.
Well, you look very natural on the horse. I don't look so natural on the horse.
You look. I'm not that natural. I mean, I just started doing this myself. I still sometimes think about this, and I go, I can't believe I'm riding along on my mule here with Ian Hannamansing. This is unbelievable. How did this happen? You know. Jump up with Ian. Yeah.
Hey, how you doing, Charlie?
Yeah, I've been planting trees. These are all fruit trees we planted last year. Nectarines, peaches. There's bears and a wolf pack that we hear and see. I get to go fishing with my dad all the time now, and we grew up fishing together in lakes in Ontario for bass and pike. And it's the first time I've ever lived somewhere where I actually know that I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. So it's a kind of a very comforting feeling knowing that I'm settled like that. It's my canoes.
Wow.
But yeah, this is the.
This is spectacular. Oh
yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah, it's sandy beach, and
it's like an ad for Ontario.
Yeah, it really is. I couldn't even believe it when I found this place, and I came down here. I thought, okay, this seems like a nice place to stay for a while. And over, you know, on this side here is all wilderness. So I can go off into the canoe off there, and just there's all sorts of different little secret spots, little coves and things to explore. And
this seems like a silly question after the drive we just took through the beautiful property, but why did you move here?
Well, to begin with, when COVID happened, I wanted to be closer to my family. You know, remember the airlines shut down and everything was shut down, and my parents are doing great. My dad just turned 83, and my mom's 77 years old, and you know, they live down the road now. I get to spend a lot of time with them, and we're very close.
It's touching that one of the motivations is to be closer to your parents. Mm-hmm. But to be fair, as a kid,
yeah,
you kind of terrorized your parents.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Well, you know, it was all part of a television show, right? So they, you know, the funny thing about
the pranks that I pulled on my parents, whether it was when I painted their car or their house or woke them up in the middle of the night. You know, they were annoyed by the sort of outrageousness of some of these pranks, but they kind of would look at the show the next week on public access TV and they'd see this whole show and they have a great sense of humor and they'd laugh and they couldn't sort of really believe what I'd done, really. So they were, you know, never so angry that it was sort of, we're disowning you, or, you know, they were supportive in a way.
But when you painted your the hood of his car,
yeah.
I got the sense he was genuinely angry.
He was angry, but if you watch it closely, my dad's a funny guy, and if you watch it closely, as he's walking towards the bus stop, you see a little smirk appear on his face because he just can't believe what I've done. And then I follow him to the bus stop, and all the neighbors were looking at, you know, this outrageous pornographic image that I painted on the car.
Oh, that.
Yeah, yeah.
So to show my parents how much I love them, I've turned my parents' vehicle into more than just a vehicle. I've turned it into the Slutmobile.
Holy Christ.
You're welcome.
Take the car.
Why can't you take the car? What? It's a present for you guys. To be nice.
It better be washable or something.
It's not. It's
Yeah,
airbrushed.
right.
Dad can't take the bus to work. I'm going to take the Slutmobile to the bus stop. Wow, there's a lot of people at the bus stop. I hope my dad's not embarrassed by his Slutmobile. Come on, I'll drive you to work.
What?
What?
That thing better be washed off the there. I don't know how you got it on there.
It's permanent. It's a present. Dad, don't worry if your neighbors see the Slutmobile.
I was thinking the 20-something Tom Green was built for the Instagram, TikTok age. Like, you'd be killing it right now if you were in your 20s.
I am killing it right now.
Okay, but you didn't have those outlets at the beginning.
No.
So you needed community access cable in Ottawa.
It's interesting. It's harder in some ways to stand out today.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sort of kidding. I'm killing it right now. It's harder to kill it right now, in a way. I mean, on one hand, it seems easier because everybody has a phone, everybody has a camera, everybody has a way of distributing video content worldwide. But on the flip side, everybody is doing it, right? Whereas in the early 90s, when I was doing my show on public access TV, not everybody was doing a public access TV show. So it really stood out. So I think it would be hard today to stand out in today's world. On the other hand, it would be also really fun because there are so many tools available to people, and it's really democratized media for everyone, which is amazing.
So when I do think of you, I think of you as a comedian. I didn't realize how big a role in your life music plays.
Bright lights fade out, had a blast going up, nearly died coming down. Good friends, good times, don't last forever, except in our minds. Someday I will return, flipped everything upside down, just to watch it burn. And you know me from back in the day, ain't it funny how everything can change? And you know me from back in the day, ain't it funny how everything can change and still remain the same?
Bright Lights. Do you miss that life? Do you miss LA?
I mean, that song is as much about being happy to be returning home and close to family and leaving Los Angeles behind and coming back to where I'm from.
You don't miss the special lattes at the coffee shop and the police helicopters and
you know, I don't actually miss living in Los Angeles. I didn't leave because I don't like Los Angeles. No, I did really enjoy living there for the 20 years I was there. I was, it was sort of the center of the show business universe, but that's sort of changed. And that has changed in the sense that you don't need to be anywhere anymore because of the internet, because of social media, because of the way the film industry has changed and the production industry has changed. Most, there's probably more movies and TV shows being shot in Canada than there are being shot in Los Angeles, right? So even within the United States, they're shooting in Atlanta, they're shooting all over on location. So since being back in Canada, I've reincorporated my production company in Canada, and I'm producing shows now. I have new projects coming out on Prime Video this year, a new TV show about me moving to this farm called Tom Green Country, and a stand-up special that we shot at the National Arts Centre in Ottawa, which is an hour of my stand-up, and I talk a lot about my story as well and poke fun at some things from the Tom Green Show, and also do some commentary about the world we're living in today, and just have a lot of laughs with the audience. And
because there are a lot of laughs in the world today.
Yeah, it's the more bizarre and strange the world gets, the more it changes, the more there is to make fun of and laugh at, and I think it takes a lot, just the social media in general and how it's affected all of our lives and how it's changed the way we behave in so many ways, from work to dating to family to everything. It's ripe for material that has not really been totally explored yet. So
we got to put our phones away and stay off them. I looked at my phone this morning. The screen time, 60 hours today. Brainwashing us.
As we're doing this interview, you just came back from Newfoundland, and you're about to go to Halifax for a gig, but then see a couple in Tennessee. I was looking at your schedule. Like the United States, so polarized, these are kind of dangerous times for some creative people. What do you say, what you don't say? Are you worried at all about being a comedian on a stand-up stage in Tennessee?
No. I mean, honestly, it's pretty polarized here too.
Yeah.
We don't sort of openly feel it necessarily as much, but it is. I mean, especially online. You go online and you start talking politics online, and people are going to let you know how they feel. So I don't talk about politics in that sense in my stand-up. I'm trying to create a place for people to escape this sort of division and come out and have a laugh, and because it is divided. And it doesn't matter what city you're in, some people in the audience are going to feel excluded, right? So I like to make fun of other things that are universally annoying, and leave some of the political commentary up to other people. But you do learn that is a real issue. When you.
That's your mule, in case anybody's wondering.
Yeah. That's Kia. She's the donkey.
Oh,
so
donkey.
She's the donkey, and Fanny's the mule. But same thing. Yeah, that's Kia the donkey, and she disagrees with everything that I just said. Is what's going on.
That's right.
I like how he gently didn't call me out, but there's a difference between the donkey and the mule there. A one-of-a-kind personality, but really reflecting a story repeated a lot of times. People during the COVID lockdowns heading home, heading to rural areas, and in his case, still being able to work from home. We have a long edition, a really interesting cut of that interview on YouTube right now. Coming up, residents of a small Alberta town are shocked to find out a prison escapee linked to 3 murders hid for decades right under their noses.
How can you fool the whole world year after year?
How police identify the pistol-packing mama who ended up playing bridge on the prairies. We break it down next. Their neighbor for years and years was a killer on the run.
Some say she was the Black Widow of Missouri, the baddest of bad girls.
How can you fool the whole world?
How she built a new life in an Alberta town.
Gonna think of everybody a little different now.
Sharon Kinney was convicted of 1 murder and suspected in 2 others, but in Taber, Alberta, where she hid in plain sight for 50 years, she was just a neighbor. Erin Collins shows us the town's reaction.
For nearly half a century, this sleepy prairie town harbored a fugitive. Locals knew her as Dee, a real estate agent, quilter, and avid volunteer. Through parts of 6 decades and 2 marriages, Dee called Taber home. But Dee had a secret.
Deidre Glavis was indeed Sharon Kinney.
and had been living in Alberta, Canada, as far as we can tell, at least since 1979.
Well, Sharon Kinney was infamous in Missouri in the 1960s. Dubbed the Pistol Packin' Mama, Kinney was accused of shooting and killing her husband and her lover's wife. But despite several attempts, the charges didn't stick. And while awaiting a retrial for the murder of her husband, Kinney bolted to Mexico. But trouble followed.
On September 18th, 1964, she shot and killed a man in a Mexico City hotel room and was arrested for the murder.
Now, Kinney was sentenced to 13 years in a Mexican prison for that murder. Mexican media called her La Pistolera, the gunwoman. Kinney escaped in 1969 and disappeared.
When we return, some say she was the Black Widow of Missouri, the baddest of bad girls. Have you seen Sharon Kinney?
Well, for years, Kinney's story captivated the public, profiled on TV and radio. Authorities never giving up a chase that eventually took them north.
We knew she fled the country, and this case became cold until recently. Thanks to a courageous tip from a concerned individual, Sharon Kinney had been living under an assumed name in Alberta, Canada.
Escaped to Canada. She had her plan.
In Tabor, news of their neighbor's true identity baffling.
To me, it seems like it's impossible. How can you fool the whole world? How can you fool the whole world year after year? I just can't see it.
The woman they knew as Dee played bridge at these tables for years, a fugitive hiding in plain sight.
How do you react hearing that your neighbor was a fugitive?
Well, it's amazing because it goes to show you that you don't really know people. That it's just amazing, like incredible.
A bit unsettling, really.
Very unsettling. Yeah, you're going to think of everybody a little different now.
Well, turns out Dee Glabus wasn't much of a bridge player, but Sharon Kinney proved a master at a different game, remaining one step ahead of the law, on the run in rural Alberta for decades. She died here in 2022, evading capture until the very end.
Here's a look at a story we have in the works about the lack of obstetricians in one part of Canada. It can make things dangerously complicated for women expecting a baby.
It's abnormal for a pregnant woman to have to travel 3 hours to deliver their baby.
It can be a matter of life and death for the mom or the baby.
My heart did stop, so they had to restart. This job almost killed me.
I'm in Northern Ontario because up here, if you're a pregnant woman, you likely have a problem. There's probably not a doctor in the town where you live who can deliver your baby. So what do you do if you're pregnant in this part of the country?
You can see that story Monday on The National. Coming up, playing in the snow rarely looks this good.
When I downloaded all the files, I could see that, hey, the moose turned out pretty good,
The biggest moose you've seen in your life is next in our moment. Okay, if you look closely, you can see a figure there. Eric Goggins, a graphic artist from New Brunswick, standing in the middle of his massive moose snow art. He meticulously dragged his feet through the snow for more than 3 hours with the aid of a drone, bringing a not-so-little piece of Canadiana to vibrant life. And that creation is our moment.
I just basically took some fishing line, tied it to a stake, pounded the stake in the ground, held onto the string, and it created a perfect circle. And I just put the drone up, and you can look at the monitor and see where you're walking. The depth of the snow was perfect this time. You could expose the dark ice to see the design beneath when you kick the snow away. I'd say that took about 3 hours to do. I remember walking back into the cottage and saying to my wife, I didn't know if it turned out very good. When I downloaded all the files, I could see that, hey, the moose turned out pretty good, So I decided to post it. Yeah, it's just crazy. All positive, really good, fun comments. They like the Canadian theme of the moose and the winter out in the snow on the ice. There's no political arguing or anything like that. So it's a no-brainer, really. It's all positive. I think I'll do another one for sure.
So this is his third attempt. The first was a howling wolf, which he says worked out really well. The second one, though, the snow conditions weren't very good, and so you couldn't really tell the image, which is part of the issue when you use outdoor snow as your medium. From all of us here at The National, thanks for being with us. You can watch this program anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app and subscribe to The National's YouTube channel. I'm Ian Hannah-Mansing in Vancouver.